Hi, fourth grade. So what is going to happen is I am going to work through some of your workbook pages with you in this video, and then I'm going to send you off to do an exit ticket that should be at the back kidney table or wherever the sub has it. Reason I'm doing this video is so you can pause it, you can work on your own pace, you can replay my work if you're confused, you have that freedom to do so. Okay, so we have been talking about adding mixed numbers. Today we're talking about subtracting mixed numbers. Very, very similar. This is just kind of building a new thing that can be a little bit more difficult, but I think we're going to rock it. So you need to open your math books to page 451. You can pause this video. I will let you get there. Play it once you're there. I'm going to work through this problem. I just want you to watch me do this for a second. I'm going to do this 2 different ways. Once we go to the next one, then you will have the freedom to pick which way fits your brain best, and you will be able to go from there. So this first question says, Ursula picks carrots and radishes from her garden. She picks 4 1/4 pounds of carrots and 1 3/4 pounds of radishes. How many more pounds of carrots does she pick than radishes? So if I look here, this verbiage is the words that they use. They say how many more pounds of carrots does she pick than radishes. So that how many more tells me I'm going to do a certain operation. Think about it first. If you're thinking of subtraction, you're right. So I'm going to be subtracting these 2 numbers. So the way I like to subtract my mixed numbers is I like to line it up vertically, and that's how I want you to do it. I think it's the way to say the most organized, and it'll make sense in a second. Like I said, you're just watching me here. You don't have to do any work. Don't move your pencil, just watch. Okay, so here I have 4 1/4. And we know we're subtracting 1 3/4. Whenever I'm adding or subtracting, lining up and down, I want to put the biggest number on top. So I have the biggest mixed number on the top. Now, once I start to look at subtracting and I focus just on my fractions, I no longer have the biggest number on top. So here's where it's going to get a little tricky. If the biggest number was still on top, you just subtract normally. You don't have to do anything fancy. Because it is not, there are 2 options of what you can choose to do. The first one is the quickest, but can be a little tricky to understand. So the first one is borrowing. So I'm going to borrow for my whole number. So my whole number over here is a 4. It is now going to become a 3. I'm going to borrow just like I would in normal subtraction. Whenever I borrow and I'm giving that to my fraction, if I think of taking away 1 whole, what would that be in a fraction? Well, in a fraction, I know the numerator and the denominator have to be the same. So I can think of this 1 whole that I'm borrowing as 4/4. So I'm going to add 4/4 into my 1/4, which is going to be 5/4. So I don't need to do that math, and I'm okay with you not doing that math, because I know if I'm adding in a whole, I just basically add in whatever my denominator is. So if I already had a 1, I add in 4, and I know that that is 5. So my new numerator is 5. So now I'm subtracting 3 5/4 minus 1 3/4. I can do that. 5/4 minus 3/4. If I'm adding or subtracting, I know my denominator stays the same. And then I know 5 minus 3 is 2. Can then subtract my whole numbers. 3 minus 1 is 2. This would be my answer. I'm circling it so that I know clearly that that is my answer. That is way number 1. That is the fastest way to do it. Way number 2 takes a little bit longer but might make a little bit more sense, and that's totally fine. So I'm going to rewrite my numbers. I'm actually going to erase this so we don't get confused. So if I have 4 1/4 and I have 1 3/4 again, we're using the same numbers. I'm going to take this mixed number and I'm going to create it. Remember, a mixed number is the combination of a whole number and a fraction. I'm going to make it into a fraction that's just bigger than a whole, also known as an improper fraction. That's all I'm going to do. So how this is going to work is I'm going to do like the swoop method, or kind of make like a U or a C or whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to start at my 4 and I'm going to make that little swoop. I'm going to times there. I'm going to add there. Now what this is going to look like is I'm going to take my 4 times 4 plus 1. So 4 times 4 I know is 16. So 4 times 4 is 16 plus 1 is 17. So my new numerator, where the end of my swoop is at the top, so I know I'm making a new numerator. My new numerator is 17. My denominator does not change. It stays as a 4. Now I also need to do that to my bottom fraction, my bottom mixed number. So I'm going to do my swoop times plus 1 times 4 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So now I have 7 over 4. Now I can subtract these numbers and I get 10 over 4. This is equal to that 2 2/4, I think is what it was, that we had before, also equal to 2 1/2. Any one of these answers I would accept is correct. Okay, now whichever method you prefer, I want you to try on this next page. So I want you to now flip to page 454. It should look a little something like this. And I want you to try number 7. I'll read it to you and I want you to try it on your own. Monica rides her bike 3 1/4 miles on Monday. She rides 2 2/4 miles on Tuesday. How much further does Monica ride on Monday than on Tuesday? Once again, I see that how much further. I know we are subtracting. So I want you to line up these numbers so that they are vertical. They're up and down. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to say 3 1/4, making sure I have that bigger number on top, minus 2 2/4. And I want you to pause this video and subtract it the way that you preferred. If you even want to go back and rewatch it, go back and rewatch it. I want you to try and subtract these two. Once you have done that, or you are super stuck and need help, you can hit play again. Okay, hopefully at this point you've solved it using one of those two methods. I'm going to show you both. So first one we're going to borrow. So I'm simply going to take away from my 3, and that 3 becomes a 2. I know I'm going to add, because my denominator here is 4. I'm just going to add 4 to my numerator to show that one whole. To show that whole that I'm adding back in. So that 1 is going to become 5. So now I can subtract. 5/4 minus 2/4 I know is 3/4. And then 2 minus 2 is 0. So my answer is 3/4. So I'm going to circle it so I know that that's my answer. That's way number 1. Way number 2. My swoop method, or my C method. I'm going to draw on my line. Times plus 3 times 4 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. That's my new top number. My denominator stays the same. Have to do the same with the bottom. 2 times 4 is 8. Plus 2 is 10. So I have 10. My denominator stays the same. Now we subtract, and I get, once again, 3/4, and I'm circling it so I know where my answer is. Does not matter which way you do it, you should have gotten 3/4. If you got that, awesome job. You give yourself a little pat on the back. Okay, now we're going to skip number 8, and I want you to do number 9. Number 9 says, what is the difference of 8 1/3 and 5 2/3? Write your answer in fraction and mixed form. I'm okay if you just do 1. I know difference means subtraction, so I know I'm going to subtract. I want you to pause this video, subtract it whichever way you prefer, and then hit play to check your work. Okay, so first things first, I need to line these up vertically, just like before. If I'm doing my borrowing method, I'm going to take away 1 from my 8. My 8 becomes 7. Here, my denominator is 3. So my whole would be 3/3. That whole that I just took away, that fraction form of it, that 1 whole would equal 3 over 3. That is what I'm adding right there. So that 1, I add my 3 to it, and it becomes a 4. Okay? So now I can do 4/3 minus 2/3, and I get 2/3. And I can do 7 minus 5, and I get 2. And I circle so I know where my answer is. Okay, now if you're choosing to make them into fractions greater than a whole, I will show you that way over here. I'm going to draw my swoop line, which you should also be drawing. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 is 25. Denominator stays the same. Swoop. That was a bad swoop. We're going to do that swoop. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17. And whenever you subtract once again, not once again, because they're not the same, you should get 8 over 3. Now, 8 over 3 is equal to 2/3. Those two are equivalent. They are equal to, if you were to give me either one of those answers, you would be correct. Or anything equal to that, you would be correct. In 4th grade, you do not have to be able to take this number and make it into a mixed number yet, or simplify it. In 5th grade, you will. But we're in 4th grade. Okay. Now that you have gotten this, I want you to pause this video, and I want you to move on to the next session. We will now be moving on to session 4, and I want you to work on those practice problems. We're just going to keep working on the same thing. All right, I'll see you over there.